Hey everyone, thank you for joining us. We are now live with 8 estimating items that are killing your profits and how to fix them. My name is Rick Storley with Builder Lead Converter. I will be hosting the webinar here today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't already, check in, post a comment down below where I have the welcome. Tell us where you're joining us from and what your business is, home building, remodeling, both, or something else. In the meantime, I am going to introduce our special guest today from Contractor Convergence, and I'm going to introduce here Rick or Jeff and Kyler and Rick. So here's Jeff, and here's Kyler, and here's Rick. Hey, welcome guys. Thanks so much for joining us. Jeff, give us a little bit of background about yourself and tell us more about your history and why people should pay attention to what you guys have to say.
Well, thanks, Rick. Appreciate that. I'm proud to say I'm fifth generation builder in my family. And Rick and Kyler tell some goofy joke about, I didn't come over on the Mayflower, but my family probably built it. I don't know. Something goofy like that. Anyway, I've been in construction all my life. I was groomed to take over two family businesses, an architectural firm and a general contracting firm in Southern California. Did that. Life exploded, and ultimately I ended up in the log home and timber frame home industry and have had several companies of my own. I've managed companies for other contractor or other owners. I've built houses as big as 22,000 square feet and done commercial projects for 2 hotels for Disney, those type of jobs. So I've been very fortunate in my career. I've been coaching contractors for about 10 years now, and happy to be here, Rick. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're looking forward to having you share your expertise as well. So Kyler, welcome.
Well, thank you, Rick. Glad to be here, and glad to be reminded that Jeff's family built the Mayflower. We haven't used that joke in a while, so that's a good one. We also call Jeff Jeffopedia because he knows just about everything there is to know. So as far as myself, my background is primarily construction, real estate, and development. I've done all three at different points in my life. I've owned a couple of construction companies and learned a lot of the lessons that we teach people in our consulting program through the School of Hard Knocks, which is sometimes the best way to learn, or it's the best way to have the lessons stick with you, that's for sure, because when they hit your bank account, you remember them a lot more. But the program that we have and the processes that we have is built on real life experience of owning and running and managing construction companies, just like Jeff said, and also, have the insight of the real estate market and development market. So really fun to combine all of that. I've been coaching in the industry for about 14 years now and absolutely love it. It's I still have the hankering to build every once in a while, but I look at it this way. I get a lot more projects done with the clients we work with than I ever would on my own. So but happy to be here.
Very wise words there. And last but not least, Mr. Rick.
Hey, thanks for having us again, Rick. This won't be confusing at all to have two Ricks. But we're excited to be here. My background is similar to the other guys, kind of at an intersection of construction, entrepreneurship, leadership, marketing, business strategy, just looking for solutions for guys that are, good guys in what we consider a noble profession, a good, honest profession where most people are willing to give you the shirt off their back and do the right thing. And we have to overcome the negative stereotypes that are in the marketplace from a few bad operators.
Well, fantastic. Well, we are going to jump right into it. I'm going to go ahead and add your slides here to the stage. And 8 big missing profit links. Obviously, estimating does not get enough due that it should. And just met with a guy earlier today, and he was talking about his financials, and he says, I use QuickBooks, and at the end of the week, as long as I look at it, go, my guys are gotten paid, I got money in my bank account, I think I'm good. But he says, I know I'm missing a lot. So I'm sure you guys have heard this story a lot. Maybe some of those on the webinar here too can relate to that. But walk us through this, kind of these 8 big missing profit links.
Sure. So first off, we want to make sure that people understand this is not going to be some boring discussion about, takeoffs and stuff. This is literally just 8 things that you need to be making sure that you get into your estimating, whatever you use to estimate. I don't care if you use Builder Trend or Job Tread or any of the other softwares, or you're just using old school Excel sheets or even older school yellow pads. Okay, how many builders out there still using yellow pads? Put a yes in the chat. But the idea is get these costs covered, and you're going to see why. I think it's going to be dramatic. This is literally in our coaching company, and when we want to see something change quickly, it is the fastest, most immediate impact to your bottom line we know, hence the subtitle. Okay? This is not going to be boring. It's not going to be a bunch of takeoff. It's not going to be a bunch of theory. We're going to walk you through these 8 items, and it will change your outcomes at the end. We're going to have a little bit more about that in a second. Who are we? We are Contractor Convergence. Here's what we do. We help custom home builders and remodelers attract their ideal leads, convert them into full price contracts, and deliver both an exceptional project and client experience. Those are both part and parcel of the same idea. We want clients to love us at the end, not just have a house that they like, but that the relationship stays strong through the whole process. And in that way, we want you to be free to grow and free to build. Build whatever you want, whatever that means to you. If it means growth in the company, growth personally, growth in your entrepreneurship journey, growth in employees. Some people want big companies, smaller companies, lots of employees, less employees, but free to build what you want, free to build your company how you want, free to build away from the constraints that typically make it so that contractors stay stuck. That's the real point. We want you to be free to build. It's on my hat. We believe in that with our whole hearts, and it is the basis of everything that we're doing. Anything you guys want to add, Kyler or Jeff, on that?
Nope, that is the premise, and that's what we're here to do, is to share some tools today that will hopefully set you off in that direction.
All right. The key is not to worry about your business. Build it so you can grow and so you can do the thing that you've enjoyed for so many years, and that's building.
Exactly.
That's where we're headed.
All right. This is the only pitch you're going to get. If you like what you're hearing and you think that you could use some help in this area, at the back of the workbook or the links, and Kyler can put these in the chat, you can book a call with us. And also, we're giving you, with our thanks for coming and attending, and also, again, a thanks to Rick, our host, we're going to give you the resource, the Big 8 calculator that we're going to show in a moment. But if you want to book a call with us, you can. There's the link. It's no fee. It's no pressure. It's to see if and how we can help you. And we only work with home builders, custom home builders, and remodelers. We don't work with trades. We want to give strategies and success tips and insights from our collective 100 years of experience working with hundreds of contractors. We want to see if we can help you in your business with that. Otherwise, this is going to be pure content. I'm moving on. There's like most workshops you hear, people, that the pitch is coming at the end. We're not going to do that. You don't have to worry about it. Let's just go. Okay. Here's the problem. So many contractors feel like they don't have control within their own businesses. They are downstream of whatever is going to flow their way. They're going to have to deal with whatever the construction gods throw down at them or what the fates have decreed. That's the way it feels. We want to show you a way that you can start to break a cycle, and I'm going to get more into that in a sec, a cycle that happens where you feel like you don't have control, where you feel like you just have to put one foot in front of the other, that you don't have control over who your clients are, the problems they're having, the schedule issues, all the paperwork, all the stuff. How can we start to chip away and make it so that you know the levers to pull, the buttons to push, the knobs to turn within your business so that you make your way out of that and you don't have to stay there. That's what we mean by free to grow and free to build. Do the things that you like instead of being stuck. If that's something that you feel like is true in your business, you can put a yes in the chat or something. If you're feeling like, yeah, I can see that lack of control. The second issue that we have is a problem that we call the revenue trap. And it feels like a hamster wheel with people, but it's also just another indicator of a cycle that happens where if you're building and you're pretty good at your job, typically the cycle or the start of the cycle is you put out your shingle to go start your own company, right? And you start your company and you sell some projects and you get them done and you have a certain expectation of what's going to happen at the end. You're supposed to make money, right? But in that cycle, some things start to happen. Maybe we forgot some things in our estimating. Maybe we had some delays that we didn't account for. Maybe we missed a couple change orders and things don't quite go the way we thought. And we didn't get the performance out of that job that we were expecting. And so what do? We believe that in order to make more money, we have to sell more stuff. This is actually a myth that is all over the place within all the books and everything else that talk about contractors, that the only way to make more money is to sell more projects. And we are here to break that myth and talk about the fact that if you start off on that process, you stay stuck in the revenue trap because you go and sign another project without fixing anything within your company. And now we just have more complexity. We have now 2 job sites. Now we have more employees that have to go and serve those clients. We have more problems that can go sideways, more delays that happen, more missed change orders and bad paperwork. And so what do we do now? Well, if we still didn't make the money that we thought we were going to make, what do we go and do? We go sell more stuff again, right? We repeat the cycle all over again. The company grows. We have to hire more people, which means that as we're continuing in this cycle and as the company is quote unquote growing, but there's not the financial performance on the other side, we now have a tail wagging the dog situation. And now we have to find jobs for the people that we've employed that are counting on us. And so we are even more in a panic that we have to take jobs. We have to say yes. We have to beat the competition. We can't say no to jobs that don't match our profile or are outside of our scope or our experience or what we're good at, because we have to feed the beast. And the cycle continues and continues. Anybody else relate to that one again?
Isn't that the definition of insanity, Rick?
Yes.
Yeah, that is the definition of insanity. I'm pretty sure Einstein said something about that, or at least it's attributed to him, right?
Why do we all fall into that trap? Thinking we just do more of the same thing, it's going to get better.
We just kick the can down the road, and sometimes we buy time, and sometimes it ends spectacularly. Anybody a builder in 2008, 9, 10, 11? If you survived, good for you. If you hear the older guys that lived through that time, hear their war stories, give them a pat on the back, buy them a drink. All right, we're moving on. We want to say really quickly what's a way that we can start to change things. Now, this is a brief 1 slide out of a training that we do. It's part of our program, where we talk about a framework for raising contractor gross margins. What we want to show is how to make it so that you can start to change that cycle. What are the ingredients that are necessary? And we use the 3-legged stool example. They're common all over business because what happens if you remove one of the legs of a 3-legged stool? It falls over. We get that. Okay, so you need all 3 legs. Well, this is an example with 4 parts, so it's really confusing. 3-legged stool with 4 parts. We just made the ground or the foundation be part of that, where we want to make sure that that foundation actually needs to be in place too. That foundation is the right client and right job. This is why we love having this relationship with Rick over at Builder Lead Converter, because we know how important it is not just to get any lead, but the right kind of lead that is derived from a marketing engine that you control, where there is actually a business model in place that's going to help you get the right kind of jobs for the right kind of clients for your business and your setup. Again, I don't know why Everybody wants to follow all the advice of all the gurus that are online, when much of those gurus are talking about business models that don't actually apply to custom home builders and remodelers. Business models that apply to subcontractors, business models that apply to roofing contractors or plumbers or production builders. Those are all completely different business models than what we have typically as custom home builders and remodeling companies. We want to tailor all of this information to exactly that audience right now, you guys. Because while some of it does spill over into the other companies, and we're glad you're here if that's you, this primary part is really, really true for custom home builders and remodelers. A targeted, aligned client that represents the kind of jobs you specialize in, pricing strategy, which we're going to spend most of our time on today, all true costs included with safe and sustainable margins, with a conservative approach to raising prices. We have to have a operational efficiency on the production side, but not just production. We mean the whole company, from nuts to bolts, right? From client acquisition all the way through the delivery of the project. We want to make sure that we have operational efficiency. And then we have to have perception of value. The client has to understand that what it costs is worth what they're getting. Okay, let me say that again. They have to understand in their mind that what it costs is worth what they're getting. And it's our job to communicate to that to them. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Here's a business model that we have been able to put together that is working tremendously well. If you guys contact us, it's my daughter's birthday today. She turned 11. Happy birthday, Adele. We will give you a video that introduces this 5 answers business model. I don't have the link to it right away, but if you ask us for it, we'll get it to you. We're talking about, what is your target market? Who do you serve? What is your actual product? What do you sell? What is your delivery method? Who will actually do the work? What is your conversion tool? How are you converting them into the business? And I don't mean just like, hey, sign here on this 30-page contract. What is your lead source? Where will you find them? And we use our designers and architects, as well as all the lead generation methods that Rick prescribes as well. Okay. So here I'm just giving you this as an example of what a business model tuned to custom home builders and remodelers could look like. Answers to these questions. If we go back over here, right client, right job, and then down to pricing strategy, all true costs included. That's really the topic for today. All true costs included. I also want you guys to see that we have our 10 commandments of contracting. The rule number 1, and we'll cover this lots more times. The rule number 1 is the cost is the cost is the cost. Let me ask this question. Is there any way to negotiate away the fact that the cost is the cost? Is there any way to cheat the true cost of building?
And to even highlight that point further, there's not just only the cost, but there's only 2 people that pay for it. Right, Rick?
That's right. Who are the 2 people that pay for it? This goes into rule number 2. Who controls the costs? You or the client, the contractor or the client? Who controls the costs?
The client.
Well, in this case, the client controls the costs, but 98% of all of the builders that we talk to, when we ask them this question, their number 1 response is, well, I am the contractor. I control the costs.
I do the estimate. It must be me.
I set the pricing, don't I? And our point is, no, you don't, because it's the client's project, the client's dream. You're solving the problem that the client has. The client is the one that's deciding how big the project will be, how much you will touch, how high the finish level will be, what each individual finish and surface and everything else is actually going to be. The client decides that. So we want to reinforce the fact, if you come away with one thing, we want you to forever, from now on, to have that little voice in your ear of Jeff and Kyler and Rick going, the cost is the cost is the cost. And never be afraid to back down from the fact that it costs what it actually costs. Okay. Now we're going to show you ways in which a lot of people are missing what it actually costs. This is where we're going to spend our time. We're going to get into the big 8 missing profit leaks. These 8 items. And we're going to show you how you can immediately improve your take on the next job you price out. And are you going to be afraid of the fact that this will raise your price?
I mean, it's definitely going to, because you're adding in costs that might not have been there in the past. There's
No,
no
you're
way.
not going to be afraid to put these in, because the cost is the cost is the cost, and the client controls the costs. One of our baseline other commandments is stop giving money to rich people. Or, to be said another way, if you negotiate away some of the costs, who is the other person that will pay for them? You'll pay for them. You'll swipe your own credit card, and you're going to pay for these things yourself. And as Kyler likes to point out, are they giving you a room to rent at Thanksgiving or Christmas? And if they're not, then you don't get anything in return. So why are we still doing that, right? Now, if you're worried about being competitive and worried about what your competitors are going to do, stop that too, because that's rule number 5. Your job is not to be competitive. It is to be profitable. Well, you say, if the price is going to go up, how do I make it so that the client understands what I'm giving for them and they're still willing to give me the money and pay for the job? Remember, we said we want to give you all the way back here. We want to attract the right kind of leads, convert them into full-priced contracts, and you want to be able to deliver an exceptional project and client experience. If you cheat the costs and you're always worried about cash flow, can you deliver a great client experience and keep the quality high on your project? Probably not. Okay. The other side to this, where we talked about this for a second, is this perception of value. You are going to need to be able to talk about what you're doing on their behalf and why it's important. And we'll get into some of that for each of these 8 items. I'm going to jump ahead to that. Rick, you want to go ahead and let me share my screen?
Yep. I will pull it out. You're going to need to present your screen here.
You got it. We're going to work in a live calculator so that we can show this and you guys can understand what we're talking about.
You should be all set. No.
There we go.
All right. Everybody can see my screen, the big 8 missing profit links. They are also leaks, profit leaks, but these are links in a chain, okay? We're going to talk about these 8 items, and I want to go over what each of them is really quickly before we start adding numbers together and putting some pricing in here to give some examples of what this could mean in your business. But let's give some definitions really quickly. Is there anybody here that's charging for pre-construction on a project ahead of time? So before you get to a contract, you're using some kind of pre-construction agreement where you're going to get paid for the work you're going to do on behalf of your client. Is there anybody here that's doing that?
If you guys are doing that, just put a yes or a yep in the chat for us down in the comment section, just so we can get an idea who is already familiar with the concept.
Okay. If you're not doing this, this is becoming more and more popular. The word is finally getting out there. We've been prescribing this for contractors for 10 years, and we're still only at a small percentage of people that are using this. If you want more help with this, this is, again, something that we train you how to do to reorient your business. Besides the big 8, it's the second greatest tool that we have to reorient a company to break the cycle of that revenue trap and the expectations of what's happening on the other side, the financial performance of a company, how to be able to break free so that you can be free to build. But what
Rick, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Just to clarify one thing. So one of the guys on the webinar mentioned that he is charging a design agreement. So I just want to clarify, is what you're talking about a design agreement, or is it something that comes before a design agreement?
It can be both. and or different, right? It can be one or the other or both. If you're design build, sometimes pre-construction falls under the design build banner when you sign a design agreement, but typically not. What we're talking about is a real, true, separate phase within your construction process that needs to be there, where you're not just working on designs, but you're working on all of these other things. Get paid for your estimating, get paid for your materials research, developing your specification sheets, developing your bank and budget documents, developing or working on revisions to all of the above. How many times have you gotten a set of plans? The plans are over designed and you have to scale back and do value engineering, and you have to go through this entire process over again and have a different set of documents that you're going to give to the bank. Get paid for that. Permit processing, approvals, client meetings, subcontractor walkthroughs, and architect meetings, site analysis, your value engineering, all of this that you're doing alongside your clients. We want to see you get paid for that. Typically at nowadays $150 an hour. You can easily get paid $150 an hour for all of this work. If you think that you have been giving this away, wait till we assign some actual dollars to this in a minute, okay? You're going to be shocked. That's all I'll say. We want to see you charge for this somewhere, whether you have a separate agreement, like an actual pre-construction agreement, which, by the way, even if you are design build, you can do. I know that breaks the ethos of the design build banner, one point of contact, one contract, but that's okay. What we want is a company that functions more than our marriage to, the design build religion. Okay, careful. I know. I'm stepping on. I'm killing some sacred cows. Okay. The next item on our list has to do with job site mobilization and demobilization. What does it take to actually go get set up on a job? That's typically at the beginning. But what about the end, when we have to go clean up all of our tools and demobilize, pick up signage, do all the other things to get out of a house, take down the zip walls, all those things, right? What happens if you're going to be delayed more than a week or two on a project? Okay, that never happens to any of you guys, that you would ever deal with delays, I'm sure. But what happens if you have to actually demobilize in the middle of a project so you start another one because of a significant delay, whether it was your fault or the client's or some other problem? Well, we need to think about that from an estimating standpoint and understand that that's a real cost with real labor associated to it, with real numbers, real hours of real guys that are going to go do real work. That's a cost. That should be included into your estimate. Same for punch list. Now, we have to always give a bit of a disclaimer. When we're talking about punch list, we mean the actual punch list, not the last 6 weeks of construction, not quality control, not fixing all kinds of problems that got left behind that you didn't deal with and waited to the end, but actual punch list. What are the final adjustments, the dings and dents in windows and doors and adjustments of drawers and everything else, right? The things that make up an actual punch list, not the final construction list, but punch. If you have ever done a job where you didn't have punch lists, raise your hand and I want to talk to you to find out how you did that. Okay? Every job has punch. We know it. We call it punch list purgatory because it's really hard to get out of. We know that it's a real phase. If we know that we have to go do that real work, just like job site mobilization and demobilization, we should have that built into our estimate. Now, this isn't color-coded, but one of the most important ones here is your project management, whoever that is. Whether that's a superintendent or project managers or a lead carpenter or yourself, or some of you have other people that would be in a supervisory role or a management role. Who pays for those people? And it is our contention and really, really important that you learn that that is a cost, a job cost, not overhead. Anyone who would tell you that these people and their salaries are overhead does not understand the business model for custom home builders and remodelers. If you were not doing jobs and you just simply opened your doors and were waiting to start a job, you would not be paying for those people because you wouldn't have any jobs for them to go work. That's the highlight to see the logic that these are actually job costs. Your clients pay for these roles to make sure that quality, safety, job site cleanliness, and all the other things, scheduling and timings, making sure that your subcontractors do what they need to do, all of those things are in place through their work. That's working on the client's behalf on a particular job. It's not overhead. It should not be included in overhead. It should be calculated as a job cost. If people have specific questions on any of these, Kyler or Jeff, if you'll holler, or Rick, and we can address them too. The next one is, and we can always come back to anyone individually in a Q&A kind of setting at the end here, but the next one's going to be warranty provision. This is similar to these others. Is there anybody that hasn't had to go do some kind of warranty service call, big or small, right? We're not talking about the big kind that hits your major failures, that hits your liability insurance or your subs liability insurance, or a product failure that would go get kicked up the chain to them. We're just talking about the normal warranty that you're required to have. Almost every state requires some amount of warranty, right?
It's really the client experience type of stuff that you're doing, the going back, the after service, the small callback type of things, not the major failures.
Once again, it's a job cost. You know you're going to have to do it. Charge for it. And if you say, well, wait a minute, it feels like I'm charging to go fix stuff that shouldn't have been a problem in the first place, go talk to Ford Motor Company. Anybody recently seen how many recalls and warranty service work has had to be done for Ford Motor trucks? F-150s are the most popular truck on the road, right? I guarantee you that they're paying, and they know exactly what percentage of that invoice price includes the ability to pay warranty work on that truck. You were going to say something, Rick.
I was going to say in the maybe everything excluding the lightning.
Yeah, exactly. Everything.
Exactly. It's not an act of God kind of coverage here, but exactly. Okay. But we know that there's some stuff that's going to happen. Again, how do we account for that? The next one, contingency. Contingency is a confusing subject. We're just going to give you the highlights of what this is. Contingency describes the fact that in our business model and in our world, when we're producing projects for people, we're doing one-off work that has never been done before and will never be done again at that time of year, at that location, with those circumstances. To say it a different way, we're not a widget factory that knows exactly how many widgets we can produce if we orient the machines the right way, we get enough of the right people, and we work for X amount of hours with X amount of raw materials. We can't possibly get that fine detailed, okay? This is a reflection of the fact that we know that we cannot cover everything. Jeff, have you ever had the perfect estimate ever?
Not once.
Not even
once. I wish
not
I could
even
say
for
I did.
Disney?
What was that, Rick?
Not even for Disney?
Real close on Disney. But that was we had a lot of change orders because I wrote 530 RFIs to get clarifications on the job. So
Oh my gosh. Okay, we're not talking about RFIs right now. We'll hold that for a different conversation. Oh my goodness. All right, so contingency is a little bit of extra. Some of us call this the padding or the fluff or the additions that we put in. We don't want you to pad out your estimates in other places. We want you to deal with real costs. And we're suggesting that you put any other kind of padding that you need into your contingency. Now, there's another reason we talk about needing to charge for this, and that is typically if you have bank financing, the bank requires you to carry a contractor contingency. And you have to actually disclose it to your clients. It should be visible within your schedule of values so that you can show what that is. This is still money that the client is going to pay you that they don't get back. This is not something that you have to keep track of, that you account for, that you have to get permission for. Typically, at least in, let me go back to this, at least in a fixed bid scenario sense. Okay. All of the advice that we're kind of giving, all of this consulting and kind of the training that we're giving is with the background that our primary contract that we really like is a fixed bid contract. However, 99% of everything that we're talking about applies to a time and materials contract. In fact, it becomes even more important that you have the ability to gain these or to put these items into your estimate, because in a fixed bid, in a time and materials contract, you're capping, because you must disclose, you are capping your margin potential. You're stating, I'm only going to make 10 or 20%. And if you don't put these into your receivables, if you don't pass these fees onto your clients, then that 20%, that's you swiping your credit card to pay for each one of these 8 items. Okay? Really, really important that we understand why we're so urgently talking about getting these into your bids. Okay? Contingency can also be a little bit of a customer service slush fund. If there's something where you know that you don't want to charge the client for it, you don't want to do a change order, it's something small and it's easier to just say yes or do it on their behalf and not have to follow all the paperwork, then you could use some of the money from this contingency. But this is also covering when there's mistakes. There's just full-on mistakes. I was talking to an award-winning builder from the Bay Area in California, and he does modern home construction, cutting-edge stuff. And while I'm on a coaching call with him, he goes, "Oh, I'm nuts." And I said, "Well, what happened?" "Well, I forgot a glue lamb. There goes $8,000. Okay, he just completely forgot to put something into the bid, even though he's very experienced, award-winning builder. He just forgot it. Or to take that example further, let's say you ordered exactly, you did all your takeoffs, you got all the right stuff, but you didn't pass on, or somewhere there was a communication failure, and your cut list for those glue lambs didn't make it to the field. And somebody cut up the big glue lamb that you needed, thinking that's what was going to make up the smaller ones. That's a mistake. Your contingency fee helps cover that. Okay? Does that make sense? I think that's good enough explanation for now. You can do your own research about that as well. The next big one that we want to talk about that nobody is charging for, I guarantee you nobody is charging for, indirect construction costs. What do we mean by indirect construction costs? We also call these supplemental construction costs. These are the fees that are not having to do with direct bricks and sticks that go into your project. These are fees that it's impossible to differentiate exactly how much money goes directly, hence the word indirect. These are not the direct costs for creating that project, but get spread out across multiple projects. Really great example of this, an easy one, is if you've got a superintendent that drives a company truck. That truck has its own maintenance, tires, gasoline, and insurance that is required to be on that truck. That truck is in service of that superintendent, and that truck and superintendent are in service of the project, and that's all in service of accomplishing what that client wants done on that project. So it is a actual construction cost. It is a cost of goods sold. It's not just overhead to pay for that truck. It's in service of the actual jobs. But we're not going to take an exact accounting of how much gas got spent going from one job to the next job. And so we say we would spread out those costs to the active jobs that you have. And we do that through our estimating and by applying an indirect construction costs category in our bids. We'll get into recommendations for what that is in a second, but that's what it covers. It can cover a variety of things. If you have to have tools that burn out or get used over time and you have to replace them, that's an indirect construction cost.
Rick, is a question. So I'll go take my car into a mechanic.
Yes.
And I get a shop fee, and one time I asked my mechanic, I said, "What is a shop fee?" I mean, like, how do you know, like, what materials used in the shop? He said it's just a percentage of your overall bill that we discharge for using the shop while your car is here. So
Yeah.
is that kind of what you're talking about?
It's the same idea. Exactly. Okay. It's the same idea. And again, we have to understand where that line is drawn for what overhead is and what's not overhead. And stop putting things in overhead that are actually job costs. If you get the second thing that we're trying to get to you, the first one is what little voice are you going to hear in your head? And it's going to say what?
Oh, I know. The cost is the cost is the cost.
Exactly. That's point number one. Point number two is charge for those real costs. Don't fake it. Don't negotiate it. Don't do some kind of shell game with yourself to say, oh, that's just my overhead. We're going to show you why that's completely not workable here in a second, okay? Material receiving and handling is another one of these that is, again, something that real work is going to have to be done, but nobody talks about it or nobody includes it, or almost nobody. When you have to get deliveries on the job site, who is going to handle that material? Who's going to restack it? Who's going to move it into the place where you need it? Who's going to put it upstairs? Who's going to unbox it and inventory it and quality control it? Similarly, material receiving and handling also has to do with security, job site security. How are you going to deal with that? Or do you need fencing? Do you need extra locks? Do you need job site cameras for those materials that are going to be stored on a job site? And so those are real costs that have to do with that particular job in that circumstance, okay? What are we going to do for those costs? How do we put them into the bid? Now, that was a lot. Any questions on the definitions before we move on and actually show you in real life what some of this can mean for you?
I just want to mention too, if anyone has questions, we've already got one question here teed up from Dwayne. Anyone else has questions, pop them in here, regardless of something you already heard or coming up. And then we'll make sure we spend a few minutes at the end of the meeting here and having the guys answer them.
Right. Okay. And I want to just answer Dwayne's right now. He said, how do you come up with the percentages? And I'm not sure if that was in regards to the overall margin, the overall margin guidance of 15 to 40%, or if it was the percentages that we have listed in column J of this example. Overall gross margin guidance is a percentage that we've seen over hundreds of contractors that we've worked with for years of doing this. And that's going to vary based on the complexity of the project, the risk of the project, and the size of the project, of how we frame that overall gross margin guidance. If you're doing a $5 million custom build, it's certainly not going to be at 40%, or we haven't seen anybody that can build enough value for the client to be able to sell it at a 40% margin for a project that large. But we certainly have seen clients selling in the mid 30s for $1 million projects if they're building the right perception of value and delivery for the client using this process. As far as in column J, those percentages are a percentage of your contract size, and that's literally based off of looking at estimates that our clients are putting together, looking at profit and loss statements for our clients based on real world numbers of what is actually being spent in regards to a percentage of the overall budget for those projects. So
in order to
hopefully that answers both the percentage.
Profitable job.
A profitable job. Correct, Jeff.
Here's the real point. We talk about profit margins. I can't tell you how many contractors I've talked to that said, oh yeah, I don't have any profit problems. I charge 35%. But when you actually get past their overhead, which is artificially inflated because they're not charging for these items, what do they get down to for how is the company producing overall? When you look at a P&L, after all the bills are paid, salaries, owner salaries, profitability of the company, guess what? The overall, this is a national average, and we have seen it over years and years and years of working with hundreds of contractors, specifically in the custom home building and remodeling space. What is the average net profit after all the bills have been paid? I don't care what your gross profit is, what you tell me it is, if you're only performing at this average.
3%.
It's actually worse than that.
2 to
What
2.5.
we see is 2 to 2.5%.
2 to 2.5%.
2 to 2.5%.
And that's a NAHB statistic that's pretty much held true for the last decade.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to go back to one thing that Dwayne said, though, because he has specifically, it's like, okay, that markup between, like, say, a $40,000 bathroom versus a $800,000 custom home, and how that variance is. One of the things that I have found, guys, is that, yeah, when you get into that custom home projects, and now you're $1 million plus, and you're fighting an appraisal typically, and even though you tell the client up front, hey, it's a custom home, it's not going to appraise, you still have that issue out there where the bank's going to say it's only worth this much, and then you're fighting on each cost. But the other issue is that the amount of supervision these high-end jobs take. So we say, okay, well, we're going to ratchet down our gross margins for these other jobs, but then at the same time, the supervision can double. And you've got so much of your infrastructure that's being pointed at this large job. So I heard. I was talking to a client of mine recently who started $1 million remodeling project and ended up turning into a $2 million remodeling project. He put a clause in his contract where he had a time and material clause in his contract for the additional design time. And literally the guy was paying one of the salary for his designer for that particular job because she was spending 30 to 35 hours a week. But have you ever seen anything like that to try to offset some of that additional, whether it's supervision or just overall resources drain that these really high-end complex projects take?
Well, you've hit a nail on the head for why we don't recommend time and materials contracts, partly, but also the fact even with cost plus, if you don't have your contract written well, you can have a project that doubles in scope, but you don't get the plus part. You don't increase your profitability or your take based on the additional scope. And so it can be very brutal. Jeff worked with a particular client I have in mind for a long time to get out of the hole that created with the client that literally doubled the scope of a project, but it was under a cost plus contract.
So, and just to clarify, Rick, the overall contract was fixed price, but he had a condition added to it.
Oh, I see.
Where because he had a designer, she could work 40 hours a week. Well, she was spending 35 hours of her week just on that job. So he had a condition added to the clause that said he could apply her salary to that job for, the 35 out of 40 hours a week.
Absolutely. That's a great way to be able to handle it. It can be a clause that's in the contract. It can be, you could change order that. There's all kinds of ways to be able to cover that, including a variation of an escalation clause, because now you're changing the scope. This is not work that we were going to do. And so there's real true costs that have to do with changing scope. Like anytime that scope changes, you change the schedule, you change all of your, what we call general conditions, right? All the things that have to be on that job site that the client is going to have to pay for get spread out because the job's going to take twice as long. So now we need more porta potties. Now we need more scaffolding for longer. Now we need all those other things that are going to be on the job. That should be involved in that change order, writing those change orders. Again, that's an estimating comment, not necessarily directly tied to these 8 links, but having a good change order process and recognizing that you have to charge all those things.
Let's throw some numbers in there, Rick, and I think that would be startling for everybody.
Let's see if we can pull out what's a small project. I put in $100,000 because that's a nice round number, but I think that might work for people. If you think that you want to see something different, we could change that, but I think we're going to leave that at 100,000. But what's a large project for people? Is that $750 for a remodeler? Is that okay for a custom home build? Do you want to put this at $1 million?
Just go to $1 million.
Rusty, John, Jeremy, any of you guys, if you have an average that you would say that you hit, if you want to throw that into the chat, we can plug that number in. Because it varies so much. I mean, a large project for some people could be 300,000, and for other people it could be 3 million. So it's hard to nail that down.
Well, if we're talking home only, not lot, and we're doing a custom home, maybe it just goes 750.
Yeah.
Let's do that. I think 750 is a good number. That could represent a whole home remodel, or it could represent a new home without land. Okay.
Right.
And then what's a typical annual revenue of companies right now, where a lot of guys are, right? A lot of guys get stuck at 2.5 million, right? I think that's a pretty decent number to kind of say that would be our annual revenue that we might get stuck at. So let's look at these. We're going to work through these one at a time really quickly. In pre-construction, we're saying that should be 1 to 3% of that total overall price. Okay. So this is how much we had estimated up to that point, but we need to add these in. So we're basically saying 1 to 3% to calculate a number. Now we want to translate that into hours or figure out a way that we want to put that into the bid. But these are guidance for what amount of money this represents in a typical project of this size. So we're going to go with, in this case, typically $100,000 project is still going to need around 3% for pre-construction. That's at about, figure that $150 an hour. You get some hours to be able to go and do that work with your client. This is in line with what we see. Job site mobilization and demobilization. I think that's probably, this is a smaller job. Typically, we're on the higher end of the percentage for smaller jobs. I have to type that the right way. So, these are all going to be percentages. Okay, so there's a guy or two guys for a few hours working on job site mobilization or demobilization. And we're going to run that down. Same idea here. We're going to just copy that down for this guy. And we're going to take the same idea for warranty provision and also our materials handling. Okay. So we've added those in. Now let's talk about superintendent and project manager. Okay. Depending on where you are in the company and the cost of labor. Now, there's some places, like if you're building down in Texas, that cost of labor might be cheap. If you're building in the Bay Area, you might outstrip even our guidance. So you have to know your market. I'm going to put this somewhere in between and say that this is about 9%. Okay. Contingency, we recommend a minimum of 2%. And indirect construction costs, we start. All of our clients, we have them start at 4%. We know that you're going to be safe and recovering most of your indirect construction costs if you start at 4% of revenue for that particular job. Okay, was anybody running the math? There's our guidance really quickly on a $100,000 job. If we add all of this up, let's show it. 20 grand was missing from these 8 items out of this bid. A full 20%. If you were doing a time and materials contract and this was supposed to be at 20%, you haven't even touched the other overhead items. This is why we say we don't necessarily care what your overall gross profit margin is if you're not seeing it in the actual bottom line after all the bills are paid. Because instead of 0.2 or instead of 2% net profit, what we want to see you at is a minimum of 10% net profit. Really and truly, most of the time, that should be more like 12, 15, even 18% if you're a remodeler, getting up into those higher numbers. Okay. This is 20% of this small job. And we wonder why we struggle, why we're stuck, why we get into the revenue trap, why we feel like we don't have control of our companies. Just from these 8 items, these are real, true costs.
And just looking at the numbers that the attendees are posting, what we got from John and Dwayne, Jeremy, thanks for throwing your numbers out there, guys.
Nice.
You guys are doing larger projects. And so, these percentages may be a little bit different. And certainly you're running bigger companies. I saw $3 to $6 million as annual project revenue or annual company revenue. So you may already have some of this stuff incorporated. This is really just to highlight how much there are missing pieces within the estimating process and evaluating your costs and looking at the overall budgets to see where these things come at. for every individual company. And this is a tool that we've developed to basically highlight that and show what is commonly missing in contractors that we start working with, either some or all of these items. And I was happy to hear, like Dwayne, say that he's charging 6% for design and pre-construction. Well, that may be covering a large majority of his designer's time and the pre-construction time for doing that estimation and the materials research, developing specs. I think you mentioned HVAC and MEP in the comments too. So that's really good, because obviously as you get experience and you see where these profit leaks are, you start to find areas where you need to plug them up. Thanks for plugging those numbers in, Rick.
I just wanted to plug them in. Okay, here it
Yeah.
is. A little bit less percentage because we have a larger job. The percentage of that job can be a little less. This might be shocking to people, but we have clients day in and day out that are charging this kind of money for projects at this level, between let's say $6,000 or $8,000 up to $20,000 for major projects to do pre-construction. If you're not using a pre-construction agreement, boy howdy, welcome to the new age. Okay.
Yeah. So Rick, just to clarify, that 2.5% that's paid outside of contract, right?
Well, yes, how you get it paid for is irrelevant. That you just want to make sure that you get it paid for, whether it's in a separate contract, or if you're not going to charge a separate contract, you better put it into the contract, right?
So one way or another, I mean, in an ideal world, it would be paid outside of contract. And
with the pre-construction,
if you're not doing a pre-construction agreement, make sure it's in your
make sure it's in there.
Contract. Sure.
Okay. Again, I brought down for maybe our superintendent, project manager, we have some economies of scale, and maybe it's not quite the 9, 10, 11, 12%. Let's call it 8%. Okay. For most people, this is going to be a 9-month project or so. So are we going to cover somebody's salary, to be there, or to share, half time on a project? Maybe the superintendent's going to cover 2 of these projects, and we also need to pay for a project manager. So in a given year, if you're thinking about, I can't hire to pay for people, well, here's where their salary is, right? Mm-hmm. So let's look at what this impact is on this one. Okay. 18.10%, $135,000 is missing off of these 8 items alone. Okay. Now, for you guys that are doing big projects, big homes, treat this as one house. Don't treat this as the annual project revenue. Treat this as one house. Okay. But if we were to go look at this and say, what is the cumulative impact in a company that's doing $2.5 million? Well, let's put this at 2.25. Let's put this at 0.3, and it really just depends on. Whoops, I did that the wrong way. It depends on the size of the project, but let's say we're doing some bigger projects to get up to this 2.5 million. We're just going to copy these all into our calculator here really quickly. There we go, 0.3. Let's say that this is now 10%. You're working in a little bit higher of an area for labor. And let's say we still get our 2% here. And let's say it's again 4% is the safe number. Ready? In a $2.5 million project, we are leaving almost $500,000 on the table. When you work with Contractor Convergence,
you're running your company as a hobby at that point.
That's right.
And why take the risk?
And you guys, on the call may be saying, well, that's crazy. We're capturing some of these costs. We have seen, and we've worked with hundreds of companies, we have seen projects, little projects budgets that are missing this kind of profitability in them at the end of the day. Companies that are leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. And so it may not be that you have all of that missing or all of that figured in. The point is to highlight that there is an opportunity to raise the profitability, to understand this pricing better, to really work on these things that make a big difference: pre-construction, superintendent and project management dollars, your indirect construction costs, and hopefully make some changes. I just dropped a link to this Google Doc, this spreadsheet, so that if you want to do these price calculations on your own and do some figuring out, or if you want to book a call with us to have us run through a real world scenario with you, you've got the tool to do that, and you'll be able to play with it.
So
now again, you're going to notice that this is raising the price, your overall price, but we'll show you how to do the sales, how to do pre-sales, how to do the construction agreement, pre-construction agreement, how to do the steps that make it so that you can still sell these projects. And one of those, again, I'm just going to say, is making sure that your business model is in place with with you understanding what you do and what kind of client you're looking for, what kind of project you're looking for. And again, that's why we're so excited to be partnering here with Rick. And we're thankful that he was able to have us on here or asked us to be here with him, because Rick is one of those links in the overall chain of the success of your company to help you get leads that are better qualified to be able to pay what it really costs.
Rick, thanks for a great presentation on this. Really well done.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rick. I want to go back and just open it up for any final questions here. We are at the top of the hour. And I want to add one thing to tie into what you started with, Rick, which is talking about value perception, and something that we finished with, which is talking about that estimating cost, that 2.5%. So Rusty's on here and he's saying, hey, if we got a pain in the butt client, we charge it up front in case we go through the process and there's lots of red flags, and then we do not want to work with this guy. We at least got paid. We covered our costs, right? So we're okay to saying goodbye. The other thing but I think the thing that we're missing here is going back to that value perception, in that when you're dealing with these higher clients, these higher end clients, it's a managerial class. They don't want to get their hands dirty. They very much want to have a turnkey operation. And so one of the things that I say they're used to having in their life is advisors. So they have their attorney, they have their doctors, they have their accountants, their financial their planners. So when you come to them as a remodeling advisor or a custom home advisor, and you say, I am going to charge you this fee to gather the information that you need in order to make a well-informed choice, that resonates with them. They get it. And what it allows you to do as a builder is you get to date them first before you get married.
That's
and
right.
As we all know, sometimes the dating ends well and it's a great courtship and you sign the contract and you get married. But if the dating does not go well, you've at least covered yourself, and that trust and that value perception will be created in that advisory relationship. In other words, the more expertise you come back with, the more information, the more that you're collaborating with them, you're their partner and you're working with them, the higher that trust level. And trust is all based, value perception is all based on trust, because everyone comes to you and they say, Rick, how much job can I get for how little money? In other words, everyone wants the most for the least. But once they trust you and they see the value, they'll say, what's the next step? And obviously the next step is hiring you to uncover the unknowns to get them the information they need to make a well-informed choice. If you're their advisor and they trust you 9 times out of 10, and that it is really a 90% conversion rate, they're going to go to contract and you're going to have a profitable sale with a happy client. That's right. Just what I wanted to add.
We call that being the client.
Annulment is better than divorce.
Yeah, Rusty, fantastic comment. I love that. We're going to put that in our quotes. Annulment's better than divorce. Yeah, it's easier to solve the problems ahead of time and know what you're getting into. What were you going to say, Rick?
Well, we just call that being the client's advocate, right? Just like a doctor is there to advocate for your best care. That's what you are. Stop thinking about yourself in terms of a salesman that's manipulating somebody to pay you the money, forcing them by the words that you say, some kind of magic script that's going to convince them to give you the money. Work as an advocate. Show them why it costs what it costs. Show them that their choices are what's influencing the pricing that's there. If you guys need more backup on this, go look up Qualified Remodeler and their client satisfaction survey. They've done it every year for the last many years, but go look up 2022 in particular. You can Google it. The number one thing that clients want is in their big list of things that will make a satisfied client. Number one thing that they want is a professional organization. The least influential thing that they care about, the price.
Yep. Yeah.
It'll blow your mind.
I think statistically, it's something like 13% of clients will make a decision purely on price.
Yeah,
You know,
it's very low.
Yeah, it's quite low. So it's all about value perception. That's right. And perception's in the eye of the beholder. So if like I talked to one guy today, he says, we have 3 core values. We answer the phone. We show up when we say we're going to, and if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. And it's like as simple as that. And he goes, we built our entire business on those 3 things. It's not rocket science.
Yep, I love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. For those of you that attended, you will get a copy of this if you want to share with anyone else in your company. Again, the link to download the calculator is in the comments, as well as the link for you guys' schedule. So Rick, Jeff, Kyler, Contractor, Convergence, thanks again. And thanks for joining us on the webinar. I hope you got some value out of this. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, everybody.